the recording, you know?
Are we live yet?
Trying to reconnect. Oh, shucks. Hi, I am Melissa Bunch.
And I am Paul Bunch.
And welcome to the Spirit Code. This is our 5-day, 5-part online mini class/discussion on marriage. Each day we're going to cover a different topic. You are not going to want to miss this. Please tune in each day. And if you would, comment below and I can send you a link so that you can get notified with every single one of these videos so that you do not miss any of them. So this week, our topics are, would you like to give the first topic, my dear?
Sure. We're going to discuss previous marriage experiences and behaviors that led towards divorce, and including the why and how. It may seem like a painful discussion, but we're going to try to make it as entertaining and hopefully as educational as possible.
Right, but it's also going to include how we've also created our current marriage in comparison.
Basically, we don't want you to make the same mistakes that we made.
Good way to put it. All right, and so that's going to be today's discussion. And then throughout the week, the different topics we're going to cover is why we no longer believe in fate. What does our marriage look like behind closed doors? What are some of the things that we do each day to just create love in our relationship, including flirting and love languages? And then how our kids are positively influenced by our marriage as children of divorced. And then the very last day, we're going to teach you how to do cleanup after conflict. And so that is going to be very much an energy work-based discussion where we're going to give you a lot of detail.
And to
so that'll be the last day.
Tell you the truth, that could end up being one of the most critical ones. So go through them all and hang on until that last one, because that one's going to be packed full of useful information to really keep your marriage alive.
I agree. Like that's made such a difference for me, being able to do that energy cleanup afterwards, because the emotions are so powerful, and we're constantly looking for a logical solution for an emotional problem. And so when you're in conflict, we're constantly looking to talk through it, and it just doesn't get better. It tends to get worse. And when we do that energy work, it tends to get better. So we'll be doing the tapping sequence and some of the energy work cleanup that we do to get back to a state of oneness and true connection whenever we do have conflict. Mm-hmm. Okay, but that'll be the last day. Today, as we said, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about some of our previous marital experiences where maybe we had some bad habits and why some of those habits even led to divorce. So, Paul.
I can start off with this. Put me in the hot seat here.
All right, you're in the hot seat, my dear.
Spill the beans.
So what were some of the bad habits that you had?
What did I mess up on?
Well, because essentially we got to this point where our marriage did fall apart. And the more open and honest that we are, the more that we can help each other to not make those same mistakes.
So one thing that is sometimes hard to admit is that you did make some mistakes in the marriage, and it's easy to.
It's okay, you can own those feelings. I made some mistakes.
Okay, so it's easy to cast blame and say this person did that and that and that, and you could go on forever just pointing the finger back and forth and coming up with all sorts of reasons. And if you step back and start looking at yourself, you can realize that you played a part in that. And, there's some things that you can work on to improve and say, hey, let's look for a solution rather than continuing to blame one another. Yeah. And so I'll describe some of the things that I've experienced that I know ended up just leading down the wrong road.
And I want to cut him off just really quick. And I just want to say that I was really impressed that he, the whole time we were dating and during our marriage, that he doesn't talk bad about his ex-wife. He's very respectful of her. And that is something that was so influential to me, was his perspective, is that it wasn't a victim perspective that everything had happened to him. It was a very accountable perspective in his, divorce.
I tried to be, at least. And so it's challenging, and to do that, you really have to look at it like, for me right now. I try to look at it as like a business. You know, not being emotionally invested in this, but more like as a business relationship. What's best for the business kind of
You
thing.
do look at it that way, or you
No,
don't?
my current relationship with my ex. That's
Okay.
and that's
I
actually what I was instructed to do with like the children in the middle class or whatever those classes are,
Mhm.
that discuss the relationship between the exes and dealing with the children. So that's what I tried to apply.
Yeah.
So let me describe some things that were bad habits, basically. So when I became offended, basically, what I would do is quickly put up some walls.
Hmm.
You know, those walls,
Like an emotional barrier.
yeah, those
Mhm.
walls are intended to provide protection.
And what us women want is we want that connection. We want to feel wanted and want to feel loved. And so that was like the complete opposite, pulling away like that.
Yeah. And I didn't realize that at the time. I'm like, look, if you're offending me, I'm just trying to protect myself. And I'm going to put up these walls until you're nice to me again.
And it's the automatic emotions and the automatic thought responses that are based upon your internal belief system and your perspective of the other person's intentions.
Yeah. And so the more that I did that, the more that I would restrict myself from showing love and affection to the person that I was married with, because I was almost afraid to, because if I started getting more comfortable, then if I was offended again, then it would break my heart again. And I didn't want to experience that.
Yeah.
And so after a while, it just became a little bit more disconnected. And this issue of communication was cut off.
Communication's a good thing.
I know. It is, if you have good communication.
Right. So let me go ahead and kind of shift that. So what have you done differently now that has created good communication? Because now you're in a new marriage. We've been married for about 1.5 years. And I think we have a pretty amazing relationship. So what have you done differently?
Well, so removing the walls that I had there in the first place really does help. And that's more on an energetic level. And so you also have to ensure that those walls don't be re-established. So,
which can happen a lot.
Yeah, so anytime a small little conflict occurs, most likely those walls are going to be recreated.
And it usually feels like a huge end of the world conflict. They never feel like small little conflicts, not the ones that mean anything.
Yeah. And so being aware that what is taking place in the first place is not the healthy manner in which you want it to go, you need to back up. You need to say, hey, I recognize that what I'm currently doing is placing a barrier between myself and the person that I want to love, and that's not what I want to do. So I need to step back and say, hey, right now I'm going to actually express to you how I feel rather than shut my mouth and say, hey, I'm just kind of backing off from this situation because I don't want to deal with it, but actually expressing myself.
I'm only laughing because of I would love to add something, but you can finish your sentence, my dear.
But not doing it in a blaming manner, not doing it in a manner that's going to be harmful.
It needs to be a self-care reason if you're going to quiet down. If you're quieting down because you're feeling sorry for yourself and you're more upset at the other person or you're blaming the other person, that's a much more toxic response. Mm-hmm. But if you're quieting down because you're choosing peace and you're choosing to shift your perspective and you're choosing to understand the other person's feelings and intentions, then we're actually looking for more ways to resolve the conflict. So we're not focusing on the problem, we're focusing more on the solution.
Yeah. And so, I mean, people are going to have different experiences. Sometimes when people are offended, they go on the offense and start attacking. That wasn't necessarily the way that
or at least that's how it feels.
Yeah.
Right. It's that defensiveness. And most people feel as though the other person is on the offense attacking when that person in turn actually feels victimized.
Right. So in my mind, I would just start shutting off. And then if I was continued to be or felt like I was continuing to receive an attack, then at that point I'd be like, I'm gonna have to start defending myself more and start going more on the offense. And then if I feel like that's necessary, what happens? It just explodes 10,000 times worse. And so
in this relationship, it does. I don't like it when he gets really, really quiet and kind of disappears from the relationship. For me, that intensifies, because my reaction to conflict is I end up just getting really sad. I feel really bad about myself. Like I can't bring the situation back to the location where I want it to be. I feel kind of like it's stuck, and we fell into this place that is impossible to get out of, which we know it's not. But when you emotionally feel that way, I would tend to just get more and more sad. And so whenever he would just kind of pull away, it would always feel that it would kind of intensify.
Like a rejection.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah. So in my mind, I'm not rejecting her. I'm just saying, hey, I don't want to engage in this conflict more, or say something that's going to be more offensive. And when this is occurring, any little tiny comment could be taken in so many different ways. It's hard to know what to say. And so that's when we need to step back and realize that we need to.
You have so much to say regarding conflict. I just think that's really funny.
But that's when you need to start realizing what's happening, that this is a cycle, and you need to stop the cycle. Mm-hmm. And you have to stop that by taking a humbling approach to it. And
to be more conscious and to be more accountable of your choices. And that actually was one of the reasons I wanted to talk about fate. And whichever day this week we choose to talk about fate, that might be tomorrow, is because really choosing to be conscious in your words and in your thoughts and in the mannerisms that you have towards your spouse, and being accountable for everything that you say and do, because this marriage is a choice. Like in one of my marriage, I've been married twice. The second one was very, very, very short, like just a couple months
before.
Right, before you. And one of the things that I recognized is that one of my spouses had the mindset that regardless of his behavior, his choices, that the marriage was permanent, and so he could behave however he wanted to. And that put me in a very much of a victim state, because I didn't feel like I had any choice. I didn't feel like I had any agency left. And so when there's no accountability for your choices and your words and your thoughts, and the other person feels as though they're kind of, put in that position without the ability to make anything better, it feels very victimizing. It feels very disconnected in that relationship. And so I find it to be very critical to be consciously aware of all of our thoughts and choices towards our spouse. And so whenever we start in a little bit of conflict, and we really don't fight, I think really all that we do is maybe we'll disagree on something, and it's usually tiny things. Like we really don't disagree on a whole lot of big stuff. But we'll disagree on something small, and I'll kind of see like this point of no return. And I'll kind of like approach it going, okay, what is he really meaning when he says this, right? What is his real intention? And if I want to feel sorry for myself, then I can find myself in this place of blaming him for something that he doesn't intend, and ending up being upset about something that really wouldn't normally upset me. But you know how sometimes you might get into that cycle of just feeling sorry for yourself and wanting to blame the other person. And the problem is in our relationship, he doesn't pick up that blame. And sometimes he'll blame me and I won't pick up that blame because I refuse to be the perpetrator and he refuses to be the perpetrator. And so it's kind of funny. That's where our conflict ends up kind of going, it's like, well, you did this. And it's like, no, I am not going to be the bad guy here. That was not my intention. Here's what my real intention was, please love me and please forgive me and understand. And we kind of get stuck in this,
well, blame game.
That blame game
And
or that victim cycle, even though we work so hard, and everything that we do as mentors, we work really hard on being very conscious. And I think being able to focus on that creator dynamic and no longer doing the drama triangle, which is where you have the victim, the persecutor, and the rescuer, and really focusing on being a coach, a challenger, or the creator, has made such a big shift, because the goal is really just to no longer focus on the problem and instead focus on the solution. So whenever we do have some sort of, tiny conflict that we're disagreeing on, if we're like, okay, well, here's really what my goal is. Here's what I'm really seeking. Here's what I desire to change or to create. Is this also in line with your beliefs? Is this also in line with something that you're willing to do? And, when we focus at it, when we look at it from a very healthy, mature standpoint, it's a lot easier. But we tend to kind of slip into this natural man pattern of having some dark energy and some negative emotions, we've studied out for a long time how your belief system about the world around you, who you are, how well you take care of yourself, your boundaries, and how your perspective of the past influences your perspective of what you expect, so your expectations of the future. And and so when I shift and heal my perspective of the past, I am able to completely change what I am expecting the future to be with my spouse. So if I go forward learning from my past, which is what we do, right? We learn from experience. So if I learn all men do this or all men do that, and if you know my previous marriage experiences, you might understand some of the different patterns that I've recognized and that I've experienced. But if I look back and I see that to be fact, that all men do this, or this is what I deserve, then I'm not going to be able to create something different in this relationship. And that's why my second one was so short. We both had some really bad patterns, and they were made very aware very quickly. So in this relationship, we came at it with a very clear, crisp understanding that we recognize that we need to heal from the past fully to be able to create a completely different relationship. So Paula actually wanted to bring up something about expectations.
Yeah, I do. So a lot of times we place these subconscious expectations upon one another. Like, we don't even know that we have that expectation of the other person. So I'll give you an example. Like, if you wake up in the morning and give each other a kiss, after a while it becomes an expectation. And so,
or on the other hand, maybe you grew up wanting that, or you grew up believing that was how it was going to look, or like you watch movies and you think that a certain way that the people acted in movies in a relationship is how it's going to look in your own relationship.
Yeah.
And then it's different.
And it's always like the Disneyland fairy tale where you're going to live happily ever after, and
you're not going
to have any problems. And so the expectations are just through the roof for happiness to occur at all times. And
to receive happiness from the other person.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the other person's just going to shower you with love and affection at all times. And if they don't, then that's a sure sign of divorce or something of the sort. Yeah. Or a sure sign that you're being rejected. You're looking for these red flags that this person isn't doing.
Right.
And so then you kind of build on this. Oh, he's not doing this one and this one and this one.
So obviously I don't deserve it, or obviously he doesn't love me, or obviously, our marriage is falling apart and maybe he's got another girlfriend or something. Like our thoughts tend to turn into a snowball.
Begin creating this false narrative within your mind because of these expectations that you're just not receiving from the other person. Yeah. And so managing the expectations is really important here, because
or communicating them. Because to tell you the truth, like one of the things that I do is I cut off people a lot, as I just did. I jump in on the conversation because there's so many things that I have to share on every topic that if I wait my turn, that topic's like long over. And so I just jump in as soon as I have that thought. And for the longest time, he thought I was being disrespectful. And he thought that I, didn't value his words and his thoughts. And that wasn't at all my intention. In my mind, I expected him to banter back and forth. I wanted to be able to jump in, and I wanted him to just continue his, and then I want to jump in, and then he can jump in. Like, I love that type of conversation because that's how I grew up, right? I love that kind of back and forth where we listen to each other, but we're constantly, in the middle of a conversation, not where you pause and then you let the other person have a turn, and then they pause and they let you have a turn. And so for him, that was what he expected. He expected this respect by waiting and giving the other person a turn and not cutting them. I hate that term, cut them off. But that was something that we had to work towards. So that was one of our little bits of conflict, was that wasn't my intention. And I had no reason to disrespect your words or your thoughts.
Yeah. And so for me, it was sometimes frustrating because I was trying to stick on a topic of discussion to get the
squirrel. Did you see the squirrel?
to get the information communicated. But Melissa, she does like to go off on squirrel tangents, and then I'm like sitting there, how am I going to bring this back if she's talking about the moon and I'm talking about,
the stars
or whatever topic, And so I'm still thinking in my mindset, I've got a set of things that I want to, communicate, but it's just changed so much that I'm like, I have to follow her discussion now. Yeah. And so so recognizing that, that's just the way that she thinks and having to respect that.
Right. And respecting that back, because that was something I was hoping for. I really wanted him to respect me for having a voice and a thought while he was talking as well.
Yeah, because as you may have heard many times before, men have these compartments that they think in. And so women, whether they have a ball of twine or whatever.
Or a juggling act.
Yeah, juggling act. So we can't keep on the same topic sometimes as the women because they change so many topics at a time. So anyway.
That's about right.
Recognizing the differences there between the men and women, how they think, it can kind of help with the relationship if you understand that difference.
One of the things that was just kind of popped into my mind was boundaries. In my first marriage, I really didn't have any boundaries because I didn't really respect myself. I didn't practice self-care. I didn't take care of myself. I lost myself in the marriage. I lost myself in motherhood. Like, I spent all of my time taking care of everybody else that I didn't take care of me. And so when you don't feel as though you deserve boundaries, you're not going to create healthy boundaries. Instead, you're going to be pushed and pushed and pushed until you can't take any more. And then I felt like I was going to fall apart many times because I was pushed past my point, past the point quite a few times. And so the more that we respect ourselves and we respect other people's boundaries and we have boundaries, the more that they're going to be able to respect them and you're going to be able to respect theirs in return. And so that was something that I found that I did not do in my short little middle marriage is have any healthy boundaries, because we believed in fate and we thought that it was fate. It was a very complicated relationship. And with the first one, like I said, neither of us really had boundaries or self-care or a lot of self-love going on at that point. And I'm kind of grateful for we just separated or divorced like 5 years ago, and me and Paul been married about a year and a half. And so in that time, I've had a lot of time to really work on my self-care and my boundaries and my healing. And one of the boundaries I created in our relationship was that he was working with the military, and he was contracting with the military. He was no longer active duty, but he was overseas in another country. And so with his first marriage, he was overseas like half the marriage, or more than half the marriage he was gone. And that wasn't okay with me. That was a boundary. And so as opposed to, and this is what I love about boundaries, is that there's two different ways. There's healthy boundaries, and then there's reactionary, unhealthy boundaries. So a reactionary, unhealthy boundary would be if I'm like, okay, well, you're overseas, you're working over there, and that's what you want to do. So, that's great. I support that. And then every single month be upset at him for not being home and not being present. And I recognize that that's how I would probably react, that I would most likely, like I was being very honest with myself, that I would feel lonely, I would feel abandoned, and I would feel, can I say lonely again? Very lonely if he was gone. And if he was working overseas, and if I only got to see him once every few months. And so that was when we made that decision. And I came and kind of set up that boundary. And I said, here's the thing. If you want to marry me, I need you here. I need you in country. I need you living with me. And we'll figure out the job situation here. But that is a boundary for me. And that was my self-care. And that was really difficult for him to honor because of the financial security that was overseas, and taking a total leap of faith to shift that. And I felt very respected because he respected that boundary. But do you see the difference on the two boundaries? One was preventative measures, and one was more of a reactionary guilt trip. So if you wait and you say, oh, no, that's okay, you can do, and let me give a better example. My mother, I love her to death, but many times, and I use this example in like all of my classes, many times the kids will want to go hang out at grandma's house for a little while one day. And so I'll call up grandma and I'll just say, hey, the kids want to come over and play for an hour or so. Is that okay? And she'll go, well, I guess I have a lot to do, but I guess. And then I've responded back saying, are you sure? Because it sounds like you're not comfortable with this. And she's like, well, I love them. And if they want to come over here, of course, that's okay. Of course. And so then they come over and they play for a little while. And then when I come to pick them up, or if I stay, depending on what we're doing for the day, and whether or not, we bring our work with us. Sometimes we'll just bring our work with us. And other times, they'll go and we'll just kind of wait until they're done playing. And so then when I contact them and I go pick them back up, one of the things that happens is grandma is way behind in her work. And then it's, well, I couldn't because the kids this, and I couldn't get this done because the kids needed me to do that. And she's in this place of, she hasn't been taking care of herself. And so she's kind of a little bit passive aggressive towards me. And the thing is that's more of a reactionary boundary, where she is like saying, well, I couldn't do all of these things. And it's kind of puts you in the victim state. And so like we were talking with Paul, that if I had just said, yes, overseas, out of country, that's totally fine. I love you, whoever you are and whatever you choose to do. And then to be passive aggressive later on and blaming him for being away. And so one more quick example, because I think boundaries is hard to grasp. My second husband, he came up with a request that he had during our marriage, and I'm not going to say what it was because it's a little bit embarrassing. But he had a request that he had during our marriage, and I wasn't okay with it. And he basically said that, to love him, I had to love all of him, and I had to accept this. And so I had a choice to allow it, like to let him cross over that boundary and to allow it, or to lose the marriage entirely. And that was one of the hardest boundaries that I set in my entire life, because I lost my spouse over setting that boundary. But looking back, I couldn't have done anything better, because I love this man, and we have created an amazing life together. Mm-hmm. But I just wanted to kind of talk about boundaries, because we talked about expectations, and I think self-care and boundaries is so incredibly critical in a relationship, because if you totally lose yourself to the other person, you end up not being the person that they fell in love with in the first place, which is this elegant, feminine, fun, flirty, I'm not elegant, but some women are, fun, flirty, silly personalities, or stable, or whatever personality it is that you are attracted to, is to still be you, to still really to know who you are. And if you are in a state where you've been married for a long time and you don't know who you are anymore, it's so critical to start with self-care so that you can get to know yourself and you can really develop that. And then your spouse can fall in love with you all over again.
Yeah, which also brings up another topic about loving ourselves. So when we have what we call like a love tank, when we have a love tank that's mm-hmm. empty, then we expect others to fill that for us, and that's the wrong direction, okay?
Yeah.
We need to fill it ourselves so that we can offer the love to others. If we have that love for ourselves, we're going to be a lot happier. We're going to be able to have that joy and that confidence, and be able to share that with somebody, and to, attract them to you as well. And
That's true. The attraction is really critical, because that way it's choice. You're still using your agency, because we don't want to force the other person to love us. We want to love ourselves so much that we attract that love from the other person.
Yeah, and it's not a prideful thing. It's just a thing that is actually it's the right thing to do.
Right.
I guess. So,
well, and it's about being accountable for your choices. So if I was nitpicking him all the time, criticizing him all the time, pointing out the annoying things that he does all the time, and trying to, because when you point out the annoying things the other person does, you're doing that because you don't like it. You don't want them to keep doing it, right? And it's a control. Yeah. It's a control reason. But if you just kind of take a step back, like yesterday he was doing something that annoyed me, and he has no idea because I didn't tell him. And so one thing that I did when I was walking around in the bedroom, I was thinking, I'm so grateful to have a husband. I'm so grateful to have this man, not just a husband, but to have this man in particular in my life, because I really treasure him being here. And I'm just grateful he's here, even though he's doing something really annoying.
It was probably the same time you were doing something that was annoying me.
I don't think so. I don't do anything annoying. So, okay. So kind of on that same level is that we have to create the relationship we want. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't just happen. You don't just unconsciously have an amazing relationship or unconsciously fight 24/7. Like whatever you put your effort and your time and your focus on is what you're going to end up creating. And so if you're focusing on everything that he's doing wrong, then you're going to end up creating conflict. And then what happens is we're not accountable for that creation. We tend to still see ourselves as a victim, but yet we were focusing on it. We created that conflict in the first place.
Just to let you know, for you emotional vampires out there, you probably don't know that you're one, okay? So
that was a little strong. It was. Please don't be offended by his strong words.
But you don't know, so it's okay. But
why do you want to explain why someone's an emotional vampire?
Yeah. So it's just going back to that love tank issue that I was just talking about, where if you feel the need for somebody else to fill that for you,
right,
that's when you become a vampire for somebody to suck on.
Like the result is love. Love is a result. Love is a creation. Love isn't an expectation that someone must give you. And that was something I experienced in one of my relationships, where the other person expected to be loved no matter what. And so that person made a lot of difficult choices that hurt me on a regular basis. And the thing is this other person didn't see it because they didn't love themselves. Mm-hmm. And they were looking externally for that love, and they were just draining me dry. Yeah. Like no matter how much love I offered, he didn't feel it.
So let's actually teach a couple things here that will change that. All right.
Right.
So 2 affirmations that we give to people is, I love myself exactly as I am right now. And the other one is, I love myself the same as God loves me. Okay? And it doesn't matter who you are. I encourage you to say this over and over each day until you truly feel that. Yeah. Okay?
I agree.
And then as you do that, you'll be like, wow, this actually does work. Surprisingly.
Yeah. No, it does. There's been many studies, and it's not fake it till you make it, because I never ever teach that in any of my classes. And we have a program that we teach, and this is absolutely more about changing your core belief system about yourself and the world around you and about your past, so that you just naturally and automatically feel love for yourself and feel love for others. And when you do that, people can't help but love you back. Mm-hmm. And it's a very healing way to receive what you're craving without draining the other person dry. And that's how you work on creating such a loving relationship. It's this deeper level that we need to work on first.
So it's actually surprisingly a whole lot easier than you might suspect. So
I love that we get excited about this.
And
it makes me so happy.
Yeah, to reinforce this, what you could do is tap. and tap on the meridian points, and that'll sink it in deeper. And so I'm actually going to do this with you, okay?
It's called the Emotional Freedom Technique.
I'll show you where to tap on.
There you go.
So I love myself the same as God loves me. And so you could do this with both of them and then move on to the next point.
You can be really creative with tapping. Like, there's really no right or wrong way. As long as you're getting these meridian points, and as long as you're using a lot of positive words and positive energy, it's going to, your glands and your hormones are going to respond, and you're going to feel that difference.
So the next one is, I love myself exactly as I am right now. Okay? So these two. So we'll just go through and actually do it together.
Repetition, 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 repetition.
And then next point is, I love myself the same as God loves me. I love myself the same as God loves me. I love myself exactly as I am right now. I love myself exactly as I am right now. I love myself the same as God loves me. I love myself exactly as I am right now. I love myself the same as God loves me. I love myself exactly as I am right now. In my spirit, mind, and body.
Okay, that was like a really short kind of a makeshift tapping sequence.
Yeah, it was just basically for a demonstration.
Yeah, most tapping sequences, we go through all the points about 5 or so times, and there's usually a purpose as we work through a trauma or we work through some dark energies and dark thoughts.
Yeah, and so as you do this, do it until you sincerely believe it. So whether it takes a month or 2 months, continue doing that until you feel like you have that confidence and really have that connection with God, so that you can see through His eyes the way that He sees you. Okay?
And you know what I love about tapping is it's like an emotional ear and in one. If you're really anxious, if you're stressed, if you're panicking, if you're feeling sad or gloomy or down, well, I go through the tapping sequences and we're just counteracting those dark feelings with loving, positive feelings of light and energy. And it helps bring you into a healthier space because your hormones are responding to that dark energy, and your hormones are going to also respond to that positive change that you make with those healing, light-giving words and thoughts. And I've used it many, many times whenever I've been in a really high anxious or a really sad situation. Like, we do it to each other when we're upset. So if I'm upset, he'll come up to me and he'll do a tapping sequence on me. And he will tap me. And this is something we actually did just a little bit ago for each other. And what I love about it is it involves affirmations and touch, 2 different love languages. And so we are touching one another, and especially if you're upset, if you are having some conflict, I love the fact that you have to look at each other, because one thing that sometimes you do when you're in conflict is you don't want to look at each other. So you look at each other, and as you're counteracting the negative thoughts the other person is having, you're kind of seeing it from their perspective, and you're giving them loving affirmations and helping them walk through their own emotions. And so it's like an act of service. It's a very godly, Christ-like love that you're offering. It's shifting your own perspective. It's healthy affirmations there's just so many different components that's always our first step when we're in conflict, is we'll do that tapping on one another, and then we go to the cleanup that we'll be teaching you on Friday. But it's beautiful. I love tapping, and if you haven't seen any of our tapping videos, I have a bunch of them uploaded to some of our Facebook pages. We have like 4 Facebook pages and our YouTube page and our website, and I can share that below if you would like to watch some of our tapping videos that we actually go through some of our more detailed processes, and they're very much connected with our relationship with God and who we are. So I have a different perspective than a lot of the different tapping sequences that I've seen online.
All right. So how about we just review real quick? Is there anything else that we need to talk about that we did in our previous relationships that
we do different now?
Yeah. Well, that were bad habits that we need to recognize and to.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about control.
Yeah.
Do you think we need to discuss it anymore?
I think that control just goes against agency. And I think that the more that you recognize that the other person has agency in all things, and that we don't force the other person to do something or to change something, that you can change your own perspective, you can change your own expectations, or you can influence them by being a very positive person in their life. And that's more of like being a coach, being somebody who is very lovingly and very highly influential without being forceful. So the more that we control or we try to change somebody, the more that you're just kind of like beating your head against the wall, the more that you're not going to be able to see any results. And so I've been able to look back and say, okay, well, my last 2 real relationships didn't work. So I needed to make a change. And if I just constantly look and say, well, I didn't do anything wrong, I didn't take part in this, or I didn't take part in this, or I was the victim, then I'm not going to be able to actually create change. I'm just going to defend my mistakes. And I think that really accepting the atonement of Jesus Christ, we're really able to say, I'm not perfect. And I'm fully aware of that, and I don't need anybody to point that out. And I don't really want to point that out to others. So if I don't want other people to point out all of my mistakes, then I'm not going to sit around and just point out everybody else's mistakes. But finding that healthy line of boundaries and respect for somebody else's choices. So if somebody else's choices are harming you, you need to use some boundaries. And I've gone through some of the advocacy programs with our state, and I've learned a whole lot about how to truly have those healthy boundaries in such a way that it isn't nitpicking and it isn't pointing a finger and looking for just a lot of conflict. It's really a place of saying, I deserve love, I deserve to be treated with love, and I deserve to share that love with others. And if somebody does not respect those and they're harming me, I need to put up boundaries to keep myself safe, because I deserve to be treated right. And so do, our loved ones and the people around us. And I think boundaries can just be really difficult in that manner. But when it comes to those negative patterns, I think that just being more conscious and more really just kind of, and that's why I want to talk about fate in a couple of days or tomorrow, I'm not sure which day we're doing it, is that it's really a matter of saying that I don't own you and I don't control you and I can't change you. All I can really do is be accountable for the words that I offer you. And so what I think has really changed that for me is that when I'm feeling something, I'm going to take more accountability for what I'm feeling. And I'm going to, instead of blaming him for what I'm feeling, I'm going to work on that inside myself. And I'm going to work on those emotions and find out now what's causing that. Because if I'm feeling victimized right now due to the fact that he didn't take out the trash, sorry, that's like a horrible example, right? But
I did take it out.
He did take that's a horrible example, because it's usually something much bigger than that. It's usually, I don't know, that you didn't pay a bill, or the way that you responded to somebody else that was offensive to me, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But the way that I foresee it is 100% my perspective and my understanding of the past and my expectations for the future and how I see what I deserve and how I think he's treating me. And sometimes people are treating you bad. And sometimes we do need to walk away from that. Sometimes we do need to protect ourselves. But in this relationship, it's safe. And that's something that's really critical. I was watching a mentoring conference, and it was really amazing. There was somebody who had been divorced like 8 times, and she didn't feel safe from number one was traumatic. And so from relationship to relationship to relationship, she didn't feel safe. And she was constantly in that high battle, constantly having to seek safety and protect herself and defend herself. Even if the other person wasn't attacking, she felt attacked in everything that happened, to the point where, 8 marriages down the road, she was still getting divorced from number 8. And so that's where I have to kind of step back and take accountability for my own emotions and say, okay, am I really in a dangerous space here? And if so, how can I set a healthy boundary, take care of myself? But if I'm not, and I'm in a very safe space, which I am with this man, he is like just the epitome of perfection for me. He is very silly. He is very smart. I'm giving you some affirmations here. and giving you some
I
love
don't know
here.
how this happened, but
He's very spiritual. He's very kind. He's very generous. He's very thoughtful. I could probably go on for a while, but the point is, I want to respect that and honor that. And I don't want to squash his personality, and I don't want to squash his manhood and his masculinity. And I want to try and be feminine, and so I'll flirt to try and be silly and feminine. And we do a lot of flirting in our relationship. A lot of touch, a lot of love, a lot of kindness. Like we're very conscious with our actions towards one another. And I think because our relationships fell apart in the past, we're more aware of how important that relationship really is. And so I find myself doing a lot of things specifically to make him happy, right? And I can't control him, but wanting him to feel good, wanting him to feel happy. And there's a wide range of different things that encompasses, but just looking for different ways to express my love and to really show that on a daily basis. And I think once the relationship has gone downhill, that's really hard. And that's kind of like the love dare that you guys may have read a long time back when the movie Fireproof came out with Kirk Cameron. He was talking about fixing the relationship when it's already ready to fall apart, and how to really create that love once again. That is possible, and you can fall in love once again. And that Heavenly Father is never going to tell you that you should be with somebody else when you're currently with, your companion. He's never going to prompt you that this is the relationship you should be in when you're really in this relationship or this marriage. That's not how God works.
Yeah.
You had something. Did you want to share this?
I do. So I want to talk about perspective. She mentioned it, and it just kind of reminded me of object lesson with perspective. It's actually one of our energy releases too. So
the victim cycle.
Yeah. So
yeah. What a great idea.
For some of you, you may have already had this discussion with us before. But if you take an object, such as this rock here, we're actually filming on two different cameras, so I may have missed it on one. Okay.
That's cute.
All right. So if I just set this up and Melissa and I are looking at this,
yes,
we are seeing it at two different angles.
It's the same rock, mind you, right?
And so this is
So it's
very
the same situation, same ordeal, two totally different perspectives.
Yeah, and this is very representative of how life occurs, because she's grown up in her own neighborhood that I didn't grow up in, her own family, her own friends,
and
they all
the
have
influences,
they all have a different impact and influence on her that I didn't receive. And I grew up in a totally different situation. I mean, there's obviously the difference between male and female.
Yes, the male and female perspective is so totally different. And like my family was very lovey, very much talkative, to the point where we did cut in on each other 24/7 and very loud. And his family was much more quiet and very respectful. And it did take
depends on the day.
Depends on the day. But it was just a different perspective. So it didn't make mine right and yours wrong, and it didn't make yours right and mine wrong.
And so as we look at this rock,
but it could definitely create conflict.
Yeah. So as we look at this rock, and let's say that this is an object of conflict, okay?
You're so hard.
She's there trying to explain to me
I'm
what
caught
she
between
sees.
a rock and a hard place.
No. and I'm sitting here,
You see how he laughed at my joke? Isn't that nice? See, if he had just been like, eye roll, I would have really felt bad about myself if you eye rolled at my joke. So thank you for laughing at my joke.
So
back to the topic, squirrel.
So anyway, I could be telling her about all the different angles and all of the different colors and whatever.
And I'm going to say no. Yeah. That is not the truth. What I'm seeing is it's really dark gray down here, and then it's really chunky and lumpy up towards the top. It's not lumpy on the bottom. It's smooth on the bottom, Paul.
Yeah. And so does this make either of us right or wrong? And obviously not. So you can see from your perspective that this is obviously just a misunderstanding. And so as we try to force the other.
Oh, I see what you're talking
Yeah.
about now. I'm
But
sorry.
Here's what's happening. You're trying
Did you
to
hear that though? I apologize. You know how
Yeah.
important that is? And to mean it, to be like, I want to see it from your perspective, and I'm so sorry that I misunderstood that.
Yeah. But even if you try to see it from the other person's perspective, it's always going to be impossible to see it in the same manner.
Right,
You
because
can-
my perception of the world is going to
Yeah.
be different than your perception
You
of the
can
world.
shift it a little bit, but it's never going to be exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Well, because my idea of what is smooth might be different than his idea of what's smooth. And my idea of like what's lumpy might just be this spot right here, or this spot right here, when he's referring to something completely different.
yeah. And so the idea of you trying to force them to see it the way that you see it is just never going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay? So,
Right.
with
Because,
this,
of course, my past is very much influencing how I see this rock. In fact, I may not even see it as a rock. I could see it as a tool used to hurt somebody. And you could see it as a part of God's beautiful creation on this earth of a planet. And I see it as a weapon of pain. And so it all depends on our experiences in the past and how we see the world around us. So I could see that as a threat.
Yeah.
And you could see that as offering something beautiful from the earth, a heavenly vibration.
Yeah. Okay, so what do we do
to make this a positive thing? Because you know how we learn compromise? I have to say compromise is not always the number that we usually don't go to a compromising solution. We typically do an energy solution where we're working on really healing our understanding of the past to be able to see that perspective in a more understanding manner, so that we're respecting one another, and it just shifts the perspective so much that you don't even really compromise in the way that I used to think compromise would be. He gives a little bit, I give a little bit, and maybe we create something in between that makes both of us happy. But that's never worked in our relationship. We were always taught in relationship classes that it would, and all the years of counseling I've gone to with my previous relationships. But you know what? It's just worked differently for us.
So in the end, if you have a conflict that really doesn't resolve itself, you have to turn it over to the Lord, okay?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be able to see all the angles 360 degrees around it like our Father in heaven or our Savior does. And so you need to trust in Him and place your faith that He can assist in resolving that issue. Okay?
So then does that mean that we pray and we say, Heavenly Father, he just did this and this and this, and I can't believe he's so mean, and can you just make him stop?
And
is that how we pray for
in a murmuring
the other person?
and complaining manner? And
so we need to remember that we're all equal to Heavenly Father, that he sees a godly perspective, and he does not see the other person as the enemy. He just sees them as another one of his children who is also suffering. And so our prayers, when they are in a manner which we are complaining about the other person or blaming the other person, is not going to come into a really true healing space either.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Let me kind of explain kind of what I was trying to.
No,
it's really just those daily choices. The daily choices of how we choose to live our life and what we want to create. So if I'm really focusing on, you know what, life just stinks. There's no beauty. There is no way to really create this beauty. Like that's going to be what I experience, because that's what I'm putting all my time, all my effort, all my energy into. Everything he does, I'm going to see as a negative. I'm going to see it as against me, because that is the belief system that I am playing into, the one that I am pursuing. But if I believe, you know what, life is amazing, marriage is safe, I'm happy, I'm healthy, I'm whole, I'm complete, I love myself exactly as I am right now, and I choose this man to be my partner, and I want to be one with him out of respect, out of love, out of respect for like our differences and our differences of male and female and who we really are and our past and our experiences. so that we become one because we complete each other, we complete that energy, but that we're still whole and complete on our own. And so I found that has been really beneficial to not losing myself, because I think losing myself was something that I had found in the past to really do so much that I would lose myself. So being really conscious of my choices, being really conscious of how I talk to you has been really important. And if I see myself as a victim, I'm going to talk to you like you're the bad guy. And that's not what I want to create either. So I have to shift my perspective of me so that I can treat him the way he deserves. So so we went over boundaries, oneness. That's really, I think, important, is to really understand that oneness doesn't mean that I'm incomplete without him, because that's when you become like the emotional vampire. But that I'm whole and complete. I love myself. I take care of myself. I respect myself, and I do the same for him. I love him. I respect him, and then having some shared interests, which everybody knows. Everybody gets that one. Like, that's really nothing new. But if you really don't know if you have any shared interests, you got to get to know each other again. And especially when there's a lot of kids involved, is making sure. I think that the hierarchy goes God, then your marriage, then your children. And then everything else, like work and all the responsibilities and all the housework and everything else goes below those. And and I think that when we have kids, we flip-flop marriage and children. And because the kids are so important, they're 100% reliant upon you when they're babies. And the problem is how critical it is for us to create an example for our children through our marriage. And so the way that we treat each other in our marriage is going to teach our children how they deserve to be treated and how they should treat their spouse. And it also helps them to feel that safety and that peace and that companionship within their home, because, like, I have found for my children that our home is a really safe, silly place now. And that whenever they need to fall apart, that it's not going to blow up in their face. There's not going to be any difficulty with really expressing yourself and being yourself. Instead, you can express yourself and be who you are while being supported in that, without being controlled, without being forced, just being in a really healthy, safe space to be who you are and to be able to develop that personality, because that personality is being developed when they're children. Even up until my oldest one is 15, she's still developing. She's still, like, her frontal lobe isn't going to be developed until she's in her 20s. So she still has plenty of time to continue growing and learning. And so the more that I accept her for who she is and assist her in pursuing her dreams, the more that she's able to create the life that she wants as well. And so when she feels that stability at home, she's also able to create her life on that foundation. So, the other thing that we just kind of wanted to go over at the end of this was also to really cut back on that negative talk, the negative self-talk and the negative talk towards your companion, like the nitpicking, the complaining, the, oh my goodness, I can't believe you, spit 6 times when you brush your teeth. That's so annoying. And then you slurp.
Can't do anything right.
Right, exactly. So for me, I'm just explaining an annoyance. And for him, he feels like he's not good enough. He can't do anything right. Like, I don't like him. He would create these deep belief systems, which are very toxic to the relationship.
If that bothers you, if you really knew who I was and the annoyances that I see within myself, if I really became who I really was, that would probably really set you off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks for that perspective.
Uh-huh.
See, and
You're
that's why
explode once you really know who I am.
And that's why, like, I'm really conscious that whenever he does something like that that's annoying, instead of pointing it out and nitpicking it, I just let it go. Like, I shift my perspective. Instead of just, like, sitting there like, oh, he's going to drive me crazy, I literally shift my perspective and I focus on how silly he was that day. Or I focus on how amazing it was when one of the kids was crying, how he made them laugh by being all goofy and silly, and how his, I love having him here. I just love having him here. I can't even express it. I mean, how long was I single? And having this man here was just amazing. I just love having his personality and the support that he offers. So I'm cutting back on, like, zero nitpicking, like not just cutting back to like 10%. We're talking zero nitpicking, because nitpicking is also an act of control. It's not respecting his agency. It's not respecting him as a person. And it's really brings no good. Like there's really no point in telling him that he's doing something that I think is wrong. Like, how does that really help any? Because in his mind, it's like, I'm just brushing my teeth. You know, why is that wrong? I'm really fine with the way you brush your teeth and slurp it 6 times. Okay, so one of the positives, this is the last thing I want to go over, and I'm going to wrap up this video, is the positives that we bring into our relationship. And this is something that I didn't do in my first marriage or my second marriage, and that was flirting. And I actually had some classes on flirting because they called me the Debbie Downer when I went to some of the group activities, because I just wanted these intense, deep connection conversations, and everybody just wanted to have fun. And I was having a hard time balancing these different needs that I had, and I needed that connection at that time. And so learning how to flirt and just have fun, like there's a place for the intense, there's a place for the deep conversations, and there's a place for the fun. And so I really learned how to bring the fun into the relationship. And so I'm silly and joking and flirting about as much as he is. And it's really helped. Like, I give him a hard time about PDA because he used to be really reserved. And I really like to cuddle, and I love kissing his face. And if I'm in church, or if I am out at the September Fest, or wherever we are, I want to put my arms around my husband and I want to kiss him. And there's no shame in that love, or in that touch, or in those feelings that I have. And in doing so, I'm respecting him, and I'm showing others how to treat him. Because, well, I'm not showing other people to kiss you. Sorry, that's not what I meant. But I'm showing other people how I see him and where he is in my world, how important he is to me. So if I was, for instance, if my kids and him and me were all out, we're at church, and I'm sitting separate from him tending to the children, I'm sending a different message to my children than if I was sitting next to him with his arm wrapped around me, or holding hands with him while still addressing the children. Because the children are seeing that relationship is a very critical component, and something that is very important to me. And so, while we're sitting here talking, we could be sitting in opposite chairs looking at each other and trying to look really professional. But I'm choosing to be cuddly, to touch, to show him how important he is to me, and to convey that to others, how important this relationship is, and that is a priority in my life. And it helps to reinforce my belief system, because when I have a story about myself and a belief system about myself, and I'm working on rewriting my story and my belief system about the world and about me, it's really important for me to support that and reinforce that every single day. So if I'm trying to rewrite a story that touch is not safe, or touch is dangerous, or men are, men hurt women or leave women, or whatever your belief system is, I need to constantly look for ways in my world to support my new belief systems, and I need to create that. Like, you're not the victim of your own life, you're the creator. Well, Heavenly Father is the creator, but you're the creator of your experiences. You're the creator of the life that you're leading. You can absolutely change whatever you're experiencing with some conscious daily effort. And it is so, I think, let me just kind of share this really quick, because I keep saying that. But one of my favorite mentors was divorced, and he was teaching about marriage, and I heard a lot of people criticize him for that. And he had said a few things that were just so beautiful about, one of the things he said was, well, that's not the story I have for myself, so it doesn't hurt. And I thought that was powerful. And then another statement that he had said was that, when you're learning from somebody, if they've never experienced trials and they've never experienced difficulties in the thing that they're teaching you, and how are they really going to be able to be a good leader or a good guide? I have experienced this. I have had struggles in my relationship. I have had these different dilemmas that I'm helping others to learn, because I've learned through that example, or through that experience. And that experience has changed him. It has helped him to know what led to, what led to that divorce, and how to pull yourself up. So if you have reached, the very bottom, and you have pulled yourself all the way up, being able to turn around and show other people and say, oh my goodness, you guys, I found a way out. Like, I was depressed, I was alone, I was divorced, I was single, and I found the way to completely turn my life around. And I was in a very destructive pattern. I was in a very painful place in my life, and I turned that all around. And now I have so much joy and so much happiness and such an amazing relationship. And I've learned how to create that, and I want to teach you how to create that. And so that is the goal of these classes, is that we really want to share with you what we've learned, and how you might be able to work on your own relationships and your own marriage to create change, to create something different than what you've experienced in the past. And even in divorce, to create a healthier relationship with your exes, which is something that we have not quite figured out, because there is still agency 50-50. And so on our part, we have been working really hard on shifting that pattern ourselves. So would you like to add anything to the end, my dear?
I do want to just say that in a relationship, it's good to have humor. When I was, raising my kids, when they, from the time that they were able to understand me, I've been telling them, when you grow up, don't lose your sense of humor. Because what happens is, as adults, we kind of get caught up in the work and all this busy life that we get involved in. Yeah. And, sometimes we tend to take things way too seriously, and the stress builds up, and we don't really get a chance to express our humor all that much. So
yeah, I agree.
So I just want to leave this with saying, don't lose your sense of humor. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. And you know what? We're going to talk more about flirting when we do our class this week on what our life looks like behind closed doors. We're going to take you into our home, and we're going to do some real life scenarios and let you just kind of watch us interact and how we treat one another. And so we'll talk a little bit more about flirting on that day, how to flirt within your marriage in a respectful, loving manner.
We're going to have to practice for that one.
You do great, my love.
We'll have to practice a lot.
All right, everybody. You have a fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Please tune in, and please comment below and share these videos with your friends so that more people watch these. And you're welcome to learn more about us on spiritcode.net, where you can see what else we offer in our program and all the other classes that we're teaching. Have a beautiful day.
All right. Bye.